to me, it's even understanding like how do you emotionally connect to the things around you so that you can be free? Because time isn't always the same. We've all experienced, math class for me or versus art class. Like time in math class went slow, time in art class went super fast. So
Right.
even how we approach the things that we own, or I love the idea of access, can dramatically change our relationship with time.
All right, welcome back to the Kris Krohn Show. And I've got Dan Martell. This ninja has the time hackage down packed. Dan, how are you doing, brother?
I'm doing incredible, man. It's an honor. Big fan of everything you put out, and I'm just excited to share the message.
Months ago, I'm reading your book because I've got a book that I've got coming out later this year called Time Machine, and it looks like it's all about time hacks, but it's really actually just about how do you make decisions that honor time. So we're definitely going to be talking about time. We got to talk about jets because that's going on in our mutual world. And brother, you've got 3 tech exits under your belt, which that's impressive.
Yeah, I mean, well, it's just impressive. It's not that impressive if you know I've been doing it since I was 17, and I'm not a young chicken. So I just started really early, had a few failed companies, eventually figured it out. I mean, software saved my life, got in trouble with the law as a kid, and just became addicted to writing code. And, it turned into a pretty cool career now for the life I get to live.
Can we actually talk about what went down with the cops at 15 years old?
Yeah. I mean, long story short, I grew up in a pretty challenging environment and got introduced to drugs at 13 and just became kind of a crazy addict and just, didn't have a lot of self-worth, didn't believe in myself at all or had any vision for my life. And I ended up stealing a car, and I got in a high-speed chase with the police and told myself before I stole the car, I was going to, pull the gun if I got pulled over and let the cops do their job. And I ended up taking a routine, just a exit off the highway, and there was a routine roadblock, and I ended up gunning past it and got in a high-speed chase. And when I eventually came into this neighborhood going way too fast and crashed into the side of a house, I went for the gun. And for whatever reason, it got stuck and kept pulling on it. And eventually the cops pulled me out of the car. And, I woke up sober the next morning, wondering what my life was going to look like. And wasn't good. I ended up in adult prison due to the severity of my crime as a teenager. They had like a juvenile section, and did 6 months there, and then eventually got released to a rehab that literally saved my life. I spent 11 months in this place that helped me understand what made me tick, my emotions, helped me rebuild a relationship with my parents, build my self-worth. And, at 17, I got a second chance, and it was there that I discovered computer programming, just helping the maintenance guy clean out one of the cabins.
Can I pause you on this though? Cause I don't know, I might be digging in the wrong direction, but I want to know, I bet you've had time to think about why you couldn't grab the gun. Like, why did it get stuck?
I mean, I have thought a lot about it, and I just believe God had a plan for my life.
Yeah.
I believe he had a big plan.
Yeah.
And
so you're out there living that plan today, and all this time has passed. What is God's plan for you in this season of your life?
I think I break it down to one simple idea, as I think God wants me to become the best version of me.
Really?
And in that process, share everything I'm learning with everybody that wants to listen. And I wake up to do that, because I mean, in many ways, I believe I think there's a quote that says, become the person you needed most in your darkest days. And that's what I do. I mean, I still, Friday, I'm going to speak to a group of kids. It's a big part of my life. And then, to the degree that people want to pay attention on social, I mean, I put it all out there for the world. I just give myself away. I give it to my kids, my community, my team members. And I think that's what God's gotten planned for me, is just to use my message to take was a pretty big mess and help other people with it.
So 4 years ago, one of the top 100 YouTubers in the world, my best friend, died in a paragliding accident. He was a little younger than me, and Grant Thompson left his wife and 4 kids behind. And that was the moment for me when I started questioning time at a different level. Because I had lost 2 other friends that year. One it was tragic, but he shot himself. And the other one had an aneurysm. And so when it happened for the third time this year and to my best friend, that's when I was like, okay, like I have all the money, but why am I not giving myself permission to live then the life that I want? And I pulled out this blank sheet of paper and I just said, I'm going to create the ultimate map of my life. And it included this 5-hour routine that I love doing every morning between like 4 a.m. and 9 a.m. It included working in the office 1 day a week on Monday, and then working 2 days from home on Tuesdays and Thursdays. It included Wednesday as my wife's day. It's just our day. Friday is my kids' day. Saturday's my day. Sunday's God's day. And the schedule has been like, it's created the most amazing life for me because it allowed me to finally, instead of move towards what I wanted, I finally gave myself permission just to start living the way that I wanted. But you writing a book on time, there had to be a big inciting moment for you that started getting you neurosing over how are we really spending our time? And it's such a highly sought after topic, and there's not very many experts in the field. Like you're the guy, you wrote the book. What inspired this book?
I mean, Kris, there's so many different moments. I think one of the big ones for me was, becoming a multimillionaire at 28 and having my whole life fall apart. My fiance leaves me. My brothers don't want to talk to me. My friends think I'm the worst person in the world just because I was chasing success. So like I went through a dark moment in my life. Even though I was sober, I was still dealing with some demons. And I was so driven. I was scared that, well, if I keep this up, then I'm just going to have to relegate the fact that maybe I'm just going to be the rich uncle and the cool uncle, but I'm never going to have a relationship or anything. And that caused me to go down a serious path of trying to figure out, like, how do I do what I do without creating all this pain in my life? I mean, that was it. And it turns out that everything I thought I was sacrificing for people, they never asked me for any of it.
Yeah. Did you feel like you were really sacrificing people, or was it more that you hadn't found your tribe yet, the people that really get and understand you?
I think it was a bit of both. I think I was definitely rude, short, aggressive, like answering the phone. My dad would call and then tell him I'm too busy to talk. And he's like, why are you answering the phone? And like just dumb stuff like that I was just, because I was working 100 hours a week and I thought that's what it took. And then I moved to San Francisco and I realized I meet all these 20-some-year-olds that are growing companies at scale, like really fast. And, one of my mentors, this guy named Naval Ravikant, he's the one that shared with me these kind of what I call the 4 master skills, right? It's content, code, capital, and collaboration. And if you understand those 4, then there's no limit of output or production. And you have the time to, like you've done so eloquently with your calendars, look at it and say, I don't need to get to a place to finally be a certain way. I just got to create it now to be that way so I can live in that space. And it turns out financially, it's a great place to live.
Yeah. Buying back your time, those 4 master skills. Can you hit them right now a little bit?
Yeah. So the first one's
Content?
Capital. I mean, you teach this, it takes money to make money. It doesn't take money. It takes leverage, and capital is a great form of leverage because it's a value store. The other one is code. So code is like automation, AI. I know that's another area you're working on big time. And like that part is, it's why I'm in software and technology. I mean, just automation is just a beautiful thing to implement into our business to get leverage. The third one is content, right? And most people, how does content get me leverage? It's like, well, I can create an SOP or standard operating procedure once and have 10,000 people follow it. And it's always going to do the thing I've described.
Yep.
Training videos, pretty much anything recorded has no cost of distribution, super valuable from a leverage point of view. And then the fourth is collaboration, right? And it's, how do I trade dollars for people's time to buy back my time to get an output so that I can reinvest my time in things that ideally light you up and make you more money?
Buy Back Your Time, just for everyone that's listening. It is a fantastic book. It's a great audio book, by the way. I enjoy the end of chapter conversations that you included in there as well. So I always talk about unmortgaging your life, like getting your time back, buying back your time. So it's a great title for the book. I want to talk about it a little bit because for me, one of my favorite things to do, a lot of people look at guys like us and they're like, geez, I don't know how you do it all, right? They're like, Kris, you own hundreds of companies and and you've done a couple $1 billion worth of this or that, and you're on your private jet. And when people come up to me, the first indication that I get that they don't get me is they say, "Oh, Mr. Krohn, I know you're so busy, but," and I'm like, "Geez, you really don't know me. Like the unconscious are busy.
Yeah, we're not busy. That's what really messes people up.
I know and it's really, we live in a world that really doesn't think that you can achieve balance. And I just don't believe that, because I'm like, for me, I had a near-death experience when I was 19 years old. I almost drowned in the ocean trying to save my sister's life. And when I came out of that experience, I couldn't, like, I was now reborn and reprogrammed to be different my entire life. It was, this is it. This is your only day, and then you're dead. Live like you're dying. And it causes me to just want to seize every moment. And then it's like, wow. But at some point I was only able to build everything as big as it is if I really learned how to delegate, which is really how to say no so you don't overcommit yourself, but say yes for someone else to do something. I think that where busyness comes from is we have a society that is largely people pleaser driven, and they say yes when their schedule demands that they say no, but when they say yes, they overcommit. And the feeling of busy is, shoot, it's 9 p.m. and I still have 8 more things I haven't done yet. And I'm like, well, that's because you said yes to the wrong things. And if you said yes to those things that you didn't have time for, you should have delegated them to someone else, or you just really should have said no. Talk to me a little bit about like some of the rules that you have in the way that you leverage time. And also, do you believe that balance is possible?
Yeah, I mean, it's such a beautiful question. I mean, a few things. I want to teach people how to build businesses they don't grow to hate, because I think that's the biggest thing that stops people. And I don't believe in balance. I believe in integration.
Ooh, you're going to need to break that one down.
Yeah, I mean, I just think I think people are looking for balance. Like I do this, I do this, I do this. And it's like all these compartments, and thou shall not meet, right? Like integration to me is just my life. It's just who I am. So it's like, if I'm going somewheres and I want to meet with somebody, I'll just bring them with me and we'll call that work. Like, I mean, I do a ton of wake surfing every morning, and a lot of my business meetings are wake surfing or hiking mountains, or, like.
So integrating is where you're actually 2 birds, 1 stoning.
It's just all one thing. And I don't separate work from life. Right. So like all my friends that I mountain bike with, I sit on the board of one company. I'm an investor in 3 others, and we do life together. Vacation. We just got back from Croatia.
Yeah, but that's not possible unless you also have standards on the kind of people that you hang out with, right?
100%.
I mean, if you hate the people that you work with, you definitely don't want to break bread with them.
That was a funny, I mean, Kris, I think what happens as we elevate, we forget that there's these beginner mindsets. Like I was coaching somebody the other day, and she's like, well, how do I solve this? I said, well, you got to train your people. And she kind of got quiet, and I go, do you even like, and she's like, not really. And I go, I'm like, well, these are first principles. Like, let's start off by, like you said, raise the standard of people around us that we allow into our circle. Because at the end of the day, I mean, there's no point in creating this masterpiece of a calendar schedule if the people you interact with are not aligned with the vision and share and support your dream. So yeah, when people come up to me and say, man, you must be busy, I go, no, not busy at all, but very effective. Because that I'm proud of. Like when I do stuff, I'm effective. So I do not use the word busy. And when you ask me, like, how do I look at my time? 2 things. I either spend time with people I love, or I do things that only I can do. And anything else that doesn't look like that, I'm allergic to it. And I don't mind deploying capital to getting out of my calendar.
So I think for anyone listening, it's like, wait a second. I thought for time hacks, you were going to give me like a list of things that I should and shouldn't do. And it's like, no, actually you have weird things on the list, like careful who you associate with, because some people are vampires and they will suck literally the time and the energy out of your life. And then you can't integrate with those people. So then it's like, crap, now I have committed myself to more things because I can't integrate, because the reality is I have double standards. And it's just like, I want to love my loved ones, but I don't have to like the other people I do things with. And I'm like, I like your 2 rules. So the first one was, you got to love
the people I spend time with. I only spend time with people I care about.
Yeah. And by the way, that's an insane time hack that doesn't look like it has anything to do with time, but actually has everything. On Mondays when I drive into the office to do my studio work, the CEO of one of my companies comes by my house, and we get in my We got this $250,000 Apocalypse vehicle, like this 50 caliber Modus gun strapped on the back of it. It's a 6x6 Hellcat
Bulletproof
engine.
windows and all the fun stuff.
It's super fun.
Sure, yeah.
And so he'll come by and he likes driving that to the corporate office as a fun flex. He drops me off for video work. But we always have that time on Mondays to drive in and drive back. And he's my friend. But at the same time, we're also having business combos, and it's like beautiful integration.
Yeah. And it's beautiful because like I have one of my mentors, I was with him once, and every morning he does the same thing. He drives to work, he calls the COO, and they just jam. They got a 45-minute drive and they just talk about updates. And I just think like when you can get to a point where every person in conversation just adds energy to your life, what I call green, it's just such a beautiful place to operate from.
Yeah. So kind of curious, just for me, everyone creates different balance in their life. I know I get your spiel on this, but here's my question. First of all, are you in a committed relationship?
Yeah, I'm married with 2 kids, been married for a long time.
So you got family going on.
Oh, big time.
You've got work going on. I'm looking at your physique. I know that you're hitting the gym and taking care of your body.
I do Ironmans and ultra races. Yeah.
Yeah. So what is your, like, how do you make time for all of those things and not be busy?
Yeah, I think it's the same strategy that you talked about. I have this framework I teach in my book called The Perfect Week. And it's like, I put it all in there. And to the degree that there's conflicts, then I negotiate, right? So I have the date nights, the morning routines, the physical stuff, the boys' night, Tuesday night. Like I have it all designed. Essentially, like I want to create a rhythm that I could operate for the rest of my life. Because like to me, building your empire is a life of unlimited creation you never have to retire from. Like that's the empire. And it doesn't matter if you're a podcaster or CEO or like, I just think people should really ask themselves, if I couldn't retire, what would I change? And start working towards that. So yeah, to me, it's in the calendar and I'm very intentional about my time. I plan the year. I plan like I'm booking stuff 3 years out because again, when you want to integrate, friends, like, I mean, just a simple concept of asking your wife or your partner, who do we want to like spend time with as a family? And then scheduling vacations with those other people. Like it takes a little bit of planning, but that's the level of intentionality I bring to my calendar.
What you're saying is it's got to be sustainable. Like it's strange, but you could liken it to the diet game. If how you're trying to change your body isn't something you can do forever,
never diet.
Then you should never change it that way.
Yeah. Right? Just eat in a way that you could eat forever and it feels good. And not like, then there's nothing to change.
Years ago, I was putting on one of my first-ish seminars and I had this woman sitting there and the event series was called Conscious Creator. And it was just laws and principles for how you like build your best life. And this woman said, she raised her hand, it was right before the lunch hour. And she said, hey, I'm actually from this area. And there's this land for sale that this farmer has. And it's like $20 million for these, I don't know how many acres, but it's apple orchards. And she says, I've always wanted to own it. And I'm sad because I don't own it. And I said, well, will you just do something weird for me during the lunch break? What do you like to do on the land? She says, well, I just like to cuddle up to an apple tree with my book and read. I said, will you for lunch, without buying the land, without needing $20 million, will you just go and read your book under one of the apple trees? And she said, okay. And she came back just bawling because she got the lesson, which is, I'll use my words, ownership is overrated. Access is everything. And I think there's a lot of people that the reason why they're working themselves to death is because sometimes there's a lot of different reasons, but sometimes it's about owning stuff. It's like, I want the jet and I want the house and I want the cars and I want these things. And I'm like, well, you realize that access is a today conversation and ownership is often a down the road conversation. And owning stuff often causes us to live for someday. And some days often don't come because you're not present to the moment and realizing, wait, the thing that I want, there's a way for me to get a piece of that right now instead of just, no, I'm just going to put my blinders on. I'm going to work 100 hours a week. In your opinion, Dan, what are some of the reasons why people do work these 80, 100-hour weeks, these horrible hustle grind cultures? I hate them. Why are they doing that? And my question for you is, because you've done a lot of coaching in this space, when they finally get what they wanted, did they actually get what they wanted?
Now, I mean, the reason people do it, I know I can only speak for myself. The reason I did it is I just didn't know a different way. I didn't understand that there is a world where the more I grew my businesses, the more time I had back. And that was the right strategy, right? Now, I had to become the person who could learn to let go, because I think a lot of people, they are their own worst problem, right? And like, I think it's absolutely a plague in society. And I think what happens is it's the way people feel validated. You know, when you talk about access versus ownership, most people collect things that then makes them a prisoner, right? Like, gosh forbid they buy a supercar and then they don't drive it, or when they drive it, they're emotionally challenged because if somebody gets too close to it. Like, it's fascinating for me to watch really wealthy people. You know, even when they get money, now all of a sudden they got something to lose. So then they get the scarcity mindset when they started with abundance. So it's like, to me, it's even understanding like how do you emotionally connect to the things around you so that you can be free? Because time isn't always the same. We've all experienced, you know, math class for me or versus art class. Like, time in math class went slow, time in art class went super fast. So
Right.
even how we approach the things that we own, or I love the idea of access, can dramatically change our relationship with time.
What's up, Kris Krohn here. I am pausing my own podcast to make sure that you have my cell phone number. Because as you're listening and thinking to yourself, man, I wish I could text Kris and ask him a real estate question or a business question, a marriage question, a health question, I got news for you. The phone number is right here. It's 385-217-3477. Save this in your phone and literally start texting me right now. Just drop your name and say, hey, Kris, it's whoever you are, and ask me a simple question. Let's go.
If there was a time machine on this planet that's actually been invented, or something that just gives you a lot of time back, what is it?
It is the private jet. There's zero debate on this. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, I would say an executive assistant would be the first place. Like, I always tell people, if I lost it all, you know, starting from zero, I would go borrow the money to hire my assistant back. Cause like, it's just the best leverage.
Yeah.
But you know, if you get all that stuff in place, the ability to, you know, be on your own schedule, because it truly is like, depending on where you live in certain parts of the world, like it's a day on each end of any trip. Like, that's real impact. And then the beautiful part, I mean, this is for me where I have a lot of fun. My plan is sending it to go get people.
Yeah.
You know, so like somebody said once, they said, you know, flying private's cool, but what's even cooler is having people come to you. I agree. But now it's like, well, how about I get the plane to go grab somebody, bring them to me, have like a great experience together so that I can be closer to my family. So yeah, it is the ultimate time machine.
So anytime I'm going somewhere on a jet that is for business, I always scoop up a bunch of business people and bring them with me. And it's interesting. I've closed some of my biggest business deals on a jet. It's better than a boardroom. It's better than the nicest office. There is definitely a feeling of abundance, just because it's when I actually feel like I'm valuing my time. A couple of years ago, I was watching a buddy of mine in the UFC. He said, Kris, I want you to watch me take this, take down and actually, win the belt. So I said, sure. But it was in Mississippi, and from Utah, me not owning a private jet yet, had to fly through Atlanta, fly there. I left like mid-morning and got there in time for dinner and watched the show. And then next afternoon, I couldn't leave till like mid-morning again, and got home at like late afternoon. I'm like, man, if I'd had a private jet, I would have just left 2 hours before the thing. I would have had dinner on the jet. I would have then watched the show, and I would have slept in my bed at night. And that was the moment where I'm like, enough is enough, because it's not that it saves me time. There are things that I'm saying no to because of the time commitment. There's so many keynotes that I say no to, or opportunities to connect. And so now it's a game of like, now that I have a jet, I have technically more travel time, but now my family's with me. We're mixing business and pleasure, that integration that you're talking about. And so it's nice not to do the TSA thing, or the anal probe thing, or the get there 2 hours early thing, or the layover thing. That is definitely what is your absolute favorite part? Like, what's your favorite way of using your jet?
Yeah, I mean, sending it to go grab people. I mean, especially when I'm trying to close a deal. So
it's kind of a flex, bro. It's kind of
I use it tastefully, and it gets the deal done. So, but honestly, sharing it. Like I said the other day, I was with my buddy Pete Vargas in Colorado, and like we were flying in meetings and then flying out, and I want to share things with people, right? Like, and I think that is my favorite, is just expose people to a completely different experience that I know for a lot of them. I used to have a mentor back like 10 years ago that said to me, when you have 100 million liquid, then you can afford to fly private.
Yeah.
That's silly.
That's not true.
I know. And like, but for like years, I used to think this.
Me too.
And so like the best I had was, flying private or first class and all stuff. And I like didn't understand it. And then I like got around other friends that had their own planes. And when I asked them about the economics, I'm like, what happened? What was this belief? Where'd that come from? And I don't know where he got it, but it's just not true. So
I know I wish I'd figured that out sooner. It was my birthday a few days ago, and I took my friends to one of my favorite places, which is the Redwoods. So, loaded up the jet, spent the day just hanging out with people that I love so much. The trees light my energy up like nothing else.
It's a great spot.
And it was just like a perfect day. And then we hit the beach on the way out in San Jose and then flew back. And it was like, it created so much value for them, but it also created value for me because they were there with me. And they were thanking me, but I wanted to thank them because it was like, well, actually, you were the context of my life. Like this was meaningful, far more meaningful because you were here. And so there's a lot of cool things when you have the cash that can start cracking that open and opening that up. But you are right that, real freedom of time doesn't come with a private jet. It does start earlier. I like that you mentioned executive assistant. I think the other thing that it comes down to is standards. Because when we have low standards, so many entrepreneurs that I know, I have them do this little exercise. I want to know what you think about this. I do this exercise where I say, hey, I want you to write down like 10 activities that you do as a business owner. And I want you to put the one that makes you the most money at the top and the one that pays you the least at the bottom. And I always like to take the highest one and the lowest one and ask for the delta, the disparity. And, some business owner says, well, when I do these particular sales calls, I make the equivalent of $10,000 an hour, but I'm also making photocopies for the office at $12 an hour. So I'm like, cool, your delta is $998 or $9,998. And when I do that exercise, I basically say, hey, you've got a $10,000 thingy you have a $6,000 thingy, and then you have a $200 and everything under. I said, draw a line there, never do that stuff ever again, hire that out and get your time back. And then they freak out. They're like, but Kris, if I get all that time back, what will I do? I said, well, then you need a new standard. Only say yes to things that are worth 20,000, meaning take your highest thing and double it, and your income will grow every year. If every year you take the highest thing, get your time back and only do that and train your protege to do the rest. And it makes like sense, and it either creates liberation for some, but it also creates a little purgatory for others because they're so addicted to this 100-hour, it's all on me. When my experience with most entrepreneurs is they make probably 90% of their money with 10 to 20% of their time. They don't want to feel guilty.
Just how it is.
So what kind of exercises do you do with people when you coach them through time reclamation?
Yeah, I mean, it's similar in concept. Essentially, I always ask them to do a 2-week time and energy audit. And then, so once you have an audit of what you do with your time every 15 minutes, then you highlight in green things that light you up, right? That bring you joy. Because I think at the end of the day, we build businesses to do things we enjoy doing. And then it's the in red is things that suck your energy. For most people would be like, financial stuff and, boring meetings or whatever. Yeah. And then you use a dollar estimate of like how much it would cost to pay somebody else to do, right? Same concept you're just sharing. So if it's like $1 sign, it would be like $10 task, right? Because like my philosophy is simple: as $1 million companies were not built off $10 tasks. It's mathematically impossible, to your point. Yep. And then once we have that, then you grab all the red stuff and the $1 sign stuff, and that's your next hire to get leverage. Because I also believe that we need to do it in a way that increases our profitability and allows us to grow. So the speed of being a good time trader, doing the 2-week time and energy audit, that's your maturity as an entrepreneur. Because what stresses people out as soon as you give them that list or your exercise is they start dealing with the real challenges, which is, having somebody else do something, making a mistake. My rule is 80% done by somebody else, 100% freaking awesome, right? So like they got to lower their expectations of other people so that they can properly delegate, but also learning how to delegate is a skill, right? Like creating a structure, inspect what you expect, building a reporting system. So to me, it's all about do things that make me the most money with my time, to your point, $10,000, $6,000 tasks, and that I also enjoy, because just because I can make a lot of money doesn't mean I want to do them. So can I figure out at scale, like now, like you, I hire CEOs to run companies because I just don't feel compelled to do that anymore.
Yeah.
But at one point I did.
So there's this, in my book, I write about this thing called the emotional quotient. We're arbitraging emotions in our choices, right? It's like, oh yeah, this choice is going to be making me more money than I've ever had before, and I'm going to be miserable doing it.
Yeah.
And you keep talking about the feelings. You keep talking about that. And I just want to know if you're willing to go a little deeper, because there's a lot of, it's not just entrepreneurs that are workaholics, right? They're also unhappy in their grind. Will you just go a little deeper on where emotional intelligence and emotional arbitrage fits in this whole time map?
Yeah. I mean, the way I think about it is, like you mentioned, I look at everything around feelings, right? And energy. And anywhere that I feel angst, for me, I look at it as like my opportunity to lean into that. So it's like the other day, I went on a heli mountain bike trip. So we took helicopters top of a mountain, awesome. That's downhill. Epic. And my house manager packs our travel stuff. So she literally packed our stuff. And one of the guys I was with heard me say that. Yeah. And he just was like, how do you trust somebody else to pack your bags? And I'm like, I totally get what he's saying.
That comes back to content, doesn't it? You have an SOP, you have
there's
a
process, there's photos. Like we sat down, we did it once, we documented camcorder method. I talk about it in my book. But like, I could tell that he would have an emotional angst of doing that, because what if they forget my gloves? But then there's also okay, breathe, like what, like feel that energy. And then ask yourself, like, I think most people's pain come from an experience that never happened.
Wow.
Think about that. Most people suffer from a future that has never happened or will happen because of their interpretation of that fear. And that was the same little small example, my friend and his gloves. I was like, dude, if I forgot my gloves, there's a pro shop here. I could have just bought new gloves.
Yeah. This, years ago, I was in Tony Robbins' camp, and he has this quote that he says from time to time. He says, the amount of uncertainty that you can comfortably live with determines the value and the quality of your life. And it's this idea that says, okay, so the gloves got forgot. Now what? Like, our need for certainty sometimes robs us of the spontaneity or the magic that life can wield, because if everything needs to be a known as a human need, then you don't have the opportunity for the unknown. And knowing everything also does take its own certain amount of time. My wife, a few years ago, after I'd kind of created my ideal week, I started living my ideal week, and I started realizing, shoot, every Wednesday I'm with my wife and I am not having fun with her. And I realized it's because I had freed me, but I hadn't freed her. And so I looked at her life and I'm like, okay, we still have 4 kids. They're all at home. So she's thinking laundry. She's thinking about the house. She's thinking about the cooking, where kids need to go. And I was just like, geez, like I finally have all the time that I could want with this woman, and I am not enjoying it. So I brought up this idea. I said, hey, honey, you know how I believe in doing nothing? Like, if you want it done right, don't do it yourself. I'm just going to hire it out. I love delegating. And I said, why don't I do that for you? And she's like, well, what do you mean? I said, well, like, why don't I get a home organizer, and they can do all of the laundry and the organizing and the shopping and the this, and they'll get a chef and they'll do all the food thing, and we'll get a driver, right? Like, what about that? And she was a little warmed up to the idea, because we already have our kids taught private out of our house. We bring teachers in. I said, just a few more staff. And she fought me hard. She's like, I won't have my identity as a woman or as a mother if you take these things from me. And I finally, after like 3 weeks, I said, listen, I'll make you a deal. Let me hire these people for just 30 days. And if you're unhappy, well, I'll fire them all. I'll take care of it. So she very reluctantly agreed. And I found these 3 amazing human beings that would do the driving and the cooking and the organizing. And all of a sudden, my wife lost all of her minutia, all of her day-to-day things that you can pay people $12 to $18 an hour for the most part. And when we started playing together, she was so present. And when she was with our children, she was so connected. And when we started doing things, she was there at a level she never had been before. And so it became it became interesting to me that it's not just freeing me, but the people I love. How do I help free them? Because if they're free, I'm even more free. I get back more time. If I invite a friend to go do something wild with me, like, oh, I can't take PTO, right? I can't take time off work, or, then it's just like, well, suck. Like I'm trying to create some really great, integration and friendship moments. So kind of curious if any of this like mastery of time has kind of bled into your personal family, or if it's taken you places that you never thought that it would.
I mean, the personal one, and you kind of nailed it on the head. A lot, and it's not just women, it's men too. Sure. There's certain things that we do, like for men, it's probably, take care of their home and do all the, the honey-do list type stuff. And, my wife ran through the same thing. I mean, she fought with me a decade ago. It's like, I really don't feel comfortable having somebody clean her house, but she's also an entrepreneur. And then, eventually she got past that. And then it's like, oh, I don't want people helping with the kids. I want to do that. What would my mom think? And we had to work past that. And like I said earlier, now we have literally a CEO of our home life who's our house manager, and she manages all the staff.
Yep.
And it allows my wife and I to be absolutely present. And I think that is the key. It's like, and that's probably why most of my friends are entrepreneurial, because they typically have the space in their calendar to be able to kind of do these cool experiences together. But I just think that most people, it's their identity around, their belief of what a person like them should be doing, that they have to rewrite that story so that they can let go. I mean, I talk about it in the book. There's these, these time assassins, these either behaviors or beliefs that are always going to be the thing that pulls them back to playing smaller, back to not having the time if they don't do the work. But I think that's what entrepreneurship is. It's the ultimate personal development program. It's like, lean into it.
Yeah. So I want to actually ask you about these time assassins, because when I look at entrepreneurs and I look at your life, right? Like just the way you're talking, I'm like, we would have fun hanging out and playing together, because
for sure.
We're doing crazy stuff in business. We're living it up as big as we possibly can there. There's time to serve. There's time to love on your family. There's time for your health. There's time for everything. And no one's busy. But when you take a look at most entrepreneurs that you're speaking to or you're coaching, what are the big time assassins that actually keep them from having your life? They have the money, by the way, but they don't have the permission. I literally, I got my personal trainer. My personal trainer is coming in to studio in a couple hours and sitting down to evaluate a business consulting arrangement, a little consult for equity. And the dude's, bringing in $1.4 million of revenue. He's got a staff of coaches. He works 80 to 100 hours a week. He's dying. He doesn't have the margins that he needs because he hasn't learned that side of business yet. And I'm like, there's a lot, and I won't disclose everything. There's just a lot of stuff going down his life. I'm like, bro, are you even happy? He's like, honestly, no, I'm not happy. You and I know guys like this. What are the time assassins that are getting to him and people like him?
I mean, the first thing that I share with people is most entrepreneurs, sounds like your buddy might be in this spot, is they're addicted to chaos. Think about it. Like they literally are addicted to chaos. They're a chaos junkie, because to the same degree that uncertainty, your ability to have uncertainty in your life will directly correlate to success. When we're younger, most of us dealt with some challenges that allowed us to deal with chaos, and that made it our superpower. The problem is that once our business is going, being a chaos junkie creates problems that don't need to be there, what I call emotional shrapnel. So some of the assassins that are self-inflicted, that's why chapter 3, I had to talk about these to help people just remove them from their life before you have to spend a penny to buy anything back, right? The staller is a big one. And for me, a staller is people just not being able to make decisions. We all know them, Kris. Like they have all the information. You just got to make a decision. No decision is a decision, and it's not going to move your life forward. Right. The other one's speed demon. It's kind of the opposite. The person that makes a bunch of decisions too fast without context, and then they got to fix a bunch of stuff because they're doing it under the guise of like, I'm a fast decision maker. It's like, yeah, but you're not a thorough decision maker. Let's start with that. Yeah. And there's a few others. I mean, one of my favorites to challenge people on is the saver. I had a good friend of mine. He ran a couple $1 million mastermind, and he's struggling with content curriculum and stuff, and calls me up for advice because I've scaled 8-figure coaching orgs. And I said, well, this is the guy you need to hire. And he goes, well, how much does he cost? And I said, I don't know, but that's the guy. Because he was debating if he shut this $2 million thing down. And he's like, does he have a book? And I'm like, dude, I don't know if he has. I'm telling you, this is the guy. Just hire him. He's going to solve that problem. Yeah. And he's like, I'll check out if he has a book first. And it's like the saver is just the worst one, because They literally, it's like the person that didn't want to buy a candle back in the day when we didn't have electricity. And then they wanted to save money by not buying candles. It meant that they couldn't read books after dark. So they didn't get the value of the candle to read the books to make their life better. They're not making that trade.
Dude, the saver that you're talking about is this ultra frugal that will not spend money to either make a memory or get time back.
That guy.
My wife a few years ago, she wanted to connect with her mom and kind of graduate from a parent-child relationship to more like a friend-peer relationship. And her mom is like the most frugal person I've ever met in my entire life. And she says, hey mom, here's the flight. Let's fly out there together. This is before we had a private jet. And she said, we're going to go do the gem show. It's kind of my thing. Will you hang with me and, for 2 days? And her mom's like, yeah, I'll do that. Her mom called her up an hour later and said, hey, I just saved $71 by being rerouted. I'll just meet you there. And it was missing this moment. It's like, it wasn't about the money. It was about the time. So that is actually one of my, a question that I want to ask you is, you start from scratch, you lose everything, and you fire up your first business on high margin. You produce $1 million of revenue that year on a 50% margin. So you're making $500,000. Most people would take that $500,000 and adjust their lifestyle to $500,000. But I know that there are things that you do with money to buy time and to also buy yourself out of certain things. So you're starting all over. You made $1 million this first year. It's on the up and up. You are at a 50% margin. So you clear $500,000 in take home. Let's just assume there's no taxes. And what are some things that you want to spend your money on outside of lifestyle to get you your time?
I mean, to me, we talked about the executive assistant. Here's the funny part. If people don't have an executive assistant, then essentially they're the assistant and they're overpaid and they suck. Yes. Like, let's just get that out.
They're overpaid and they suck.
They suck. And people are like, oh, I need to hire a COO. I'm like, you don't even know how to have a relationship with somebody that manages your inbox. Like, you don't need to spend $300,000 to hire an operator. Right. Yeah. So that's right out of the gate. And to your point, all the stuff I pay with the cash flow of my assets, right? Yep. So until I would get the business to that point, I'm not upgrading my lifestyle at all. I'm reinvesting it in buying back my time to get more leverage on my dollar to have the best returns on that capital.
Couple more things that you'd buy then. Couple more things. Going to put you on the spot.
I literally reverse engineer from the calendar. So depending on what my time is being allocated to, if it's, delivery of whatever I'm doing, fulfillment, that goes next. So it always goes executive assistant, and there's a whole framework called.
So we're really just talking about employees, right? It's like, if I made $500,000 and I can put everything I do into 3 people buckets, then technically, if I had enough money to maintain my lifestyle and pay those 3 people buckets, before you buy a nice whatever, you're going to acquire the assets, the people, to free up your time.
I'm literally going to get 3 weeks worth of leverage and cloning of my time before I need to buy any stuff, because the return is so quick.
Did everyone just hear what I need you to listen to what Dan just said, because for the entrepreneurs and my buddies, when you make your first financial wins, those wins aren't for a supercar or a nicer house upgrade or for a trip somewhere in the world. The wins are for you to evaluate your schedule and to put everything in buckets and say, well, if I had an executive assistant, I could get back 12 hours a week. And if I had this, I could buy back 20 hours a week. And if I hired a high ticket closer instead of me doing the sales, that would save me at least, 8 hours a week. And it's like, the first thing you do with your money is not for you. It's not for stuff. It is for buying back your time. And, God, I just love that so much. I believe in that so much. It makes it so, at some point when you have so many companies, it's like all you can do is sit on a board. And then you need to hire a chairman of the board, because at some point you have to find a way to continue getting the game of leverage. So I'm hearing from you, it's got to be fun. And you got to have the ability to integrate. And then other than that, you're basically, your real solution is you want a level of financial success because you're going to use that to create more time by acquiring more of the right people that help this entire machine and empire work.
Yeah. And back to what we said at the beginning, so that I can become more, so I have more to give to the world.
Ooh, and that, just say it one more time.
So that is the game. It's the 2 things I think every person on earth is here to do. Become the 10.0 version of yourself. Be the person that God created. You're created in His image. Go wake up every day to try to strive to be that. Someday, maybe you may never get there, but let's aim for it. And on that journey, give the success path to everybody else that's paying attention. Teach other people, share yourself with the world. And I just think that's an incredible place to live from.
Become more, give more. That just went down in my notes. Dan, it has been a pleasure, brother. If you were to offer some final words of wisdom to, I've got real estate investors, entrepreneurs, personal development, growth warriors, to all of them, I think that they should definitely read your book. I want you to drop where they can find more of Dan Martell, but some final advice for them.
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, a business is a tool to help us become more, right? It's the ultimate personal development program with unlimited compensation. And we shouldn't do that without considering how to find the freedom in that exercise so that we have the time to share it with the people. And it doesn't require, like, some people, they set these standards of like, once I get my first 5 million, then I'll be able to do X, Y, and Z. It's like, no, that's a today thing. So I really want to challenge everybody to retool their calendar. If they want to check out the book, buybackyourtime.com is the best place to get it. The best place to get free content to learn how I do what I do in the behind the scenes is Instagram. Just follow me on Instagram. I literally share my whole life behind the scenes on my reels. I post, or on my stories, I post my reels. I introduce you to the characters in my life on how I do it all. Because I just want to share the process to help other people.
Dan Martell, everybody, he is doing it all. He is having it all. It's clear that he's loving his life. If you could feel his energy, or if you've been able to see his face energetically, brother, you got it going on. You have so much figured out. You have made yourself more. You're giving back so much more. And it's been my pleasure to have you here on the Kris Krohn Show. Thank you so much.
It's an honor. Thanks, Kris.